Well, good morning and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Clinton Griffiths. The 2010 wheat crop is looking pretty good, especially when you compare it to what happened in 2009. This week, we drove from Stillwater up north to Woodward, south to Sealing, and to the foothills of the Quartz Mountains here in GREER County. And by all accounts, the wheat crop is growing strong. But experts say there are a few things producers need to consider when looking for diseases out in the field. The wheat is green, the heads are filling. But it was only a few weeks ago that many producers in southwest Oklahoma were wondering if the crop would have enough moisture to make it to harvest.
It looks real good. We were getting to a point just before that good rain that it was getting real questionable if we were going to have the moisture to get there. The wheat was starting to stress, and you could really tell it. Farmers in the coffee shop, you heard, we need rain, we need rain, we need rain. And then we got 2 days of the best falling 2-inch rain and 2-inch plus that you could ever want. And it's just really, the potential looks really good right now.
And experts agree, things are looking good. But in certain places and on certain varieties, stripe rust threatens to rob the 2010 wheat crop of yield and test weight. We caught up with Oklahoma State wheat geneticist Brett Carver and wheat pathologist Bob Hunger in GREER County for a look at why this crop of stripe rust is uniquely puzzling. As a wheat breeder, that's something that you're always working on and trying to stay ahead of.
Right, we're always trying to play defense. What's coming at us that we might not have coming at us in previous years, and you can really compare this to a sporting event. Not to lighten the situation at all, but it is kind of like a sporting event where we're playing the game. The game is against a disease, in this case stripe rust. We had our team out there this year. We went into halftime, and then all of a sudden, after halftime, out comes another team onto the field.
Now explain that now. I mean, rust has changed?
That's right. It maybe not changed, but it has shifted to where different types of the rust, stripe rust pathogen, are present in our commercial fields. Those different types react differently to different varieties. So what we're seeing now are some of the varieties that we thought were resistant, had a pretty good resistant mechanism, are not showing up so resistant.
What's the telltale sign to you that you know that this may be something different? Is it
Sure, the first telltale sign was Jagger. Jagger has a very good disease stripe rust resistance mechanism in the sense of it has, I think, more than one gene, probably 2 or 3 genes that allow it to cope with this disease. So if you see that mechanism break down, not really break down, but succumb to this new pathogen, then we have a pretty bold critter out there that can overtake not just one gene, but several genes in combination.
Yeah, here we have a guard row of the variety Jaggerline, which you can tell is quite susceptible to stripe rust. Previously, Jaggerline and Jagger have the same source of resistance to stripe rust, and that's been a very effective source of resistance. But it seems like the pathogen has adapted to that resistance and now overcomes it and is causing those varieties to read very susceptible.
Now we get down here and look at it. Let's talk through the identification of what we're looking at here.
Well, in this case, all of the rusts appear have a rusty color. Stripe rust tends to be a little bit more orangish, bright rust, and quite often will appear in stripes, as in this leaf here where you can see a stripe occurring across the leaf. Leaf rust tends to be a little bit more of a brick red-brown color. The pustules, the sporulating pustules, are spread all over the leaf, and usually the stripe rust will occur when the temperatures are more cool, as they've been for the last several weeks. Right. Leaf rust would be the next one to move in as temperatures warm up and we have the right moisture conditions.
Stripe rust likes living in cool, wet weather. Once temperatures begin to consistently reach the mid-80s during the day and the mid-60s to 70s at night, stripe rust begins to die off, although that's when leaf rust can take over. What's making wheat breeders both restless and hopeful about this year's race of stripe rust is not only where it is showing up, but where it isn't.
Up until this time, I had considered Endurance sort of a middle-of-the-road variety in terms of reaction to stripe rust. If we had a lot of stripe rust, it would show more symptoms than would be desirable
Right.
for higher yields, but lower amount of disease pressure, it would be okay. This year, we're not seeing a lot of stripe rust on endurance in conditions like we have in this field where the severity is moderately high.
Right. Show us what a reaction of, or a low reaction to rust might look like.
Well, here we have one right beside us, a pretty good example. The canopy is green almost all the way to the ground, and you do not see the typical symptoms of stripe rust, which would be long streaks of yellow on the leaves, and usually beginning at the lower part of the canopy and working its way up, like you see on this neighboring plot.
Right.
Where the definite streaks are present, and when they make it up to the flag leaf, the top of the canopy, we get concerned there because that's going to rob our yield potential.
According to experts, a crop like this one, with rust showing up before flowering, can see yield reductions of 20 to 25%, plus a loss in test weights. If stripe rust or leaf rust doesn't show up until the dough stage, those losses are likely to be only 5 to 10% in yields. That's why producers with high yield potential may want to consider a fungicide. I guess at this point, you need to know if it's in your field, and then you need to treat for it, I suppose.
Right, and ideally, you know, a lot of this infection you see here is down on the lower leaves. If you look at the flag leaves, they tend to be quite a bit more clean. There are some stripe rust pustules on the flag leaves, but not near as many as down low. The wheat itself is just starting to bloom, anthers are starting to come out, and so this field is kind of questionable, or this plot would be kind of questionable if it was the whole field, about whether it could be sprayed, because actually it's a little bit beyond. You're not supposed to put on any fungicide sprays once flowering has started, which it already has here.
Right.
Fields around this area are in that full head emergence where they could still be sprayed, to a little bit beyond that where blooming, flowering has really started in them.
Right. So as a producer this year, let's start with them. They've got the crop in the field. What do they need to be looking at and thinking about?
Well, of course, we'd like to get to them in time to make these kinds of decisions, and we might be just a little bit late, at least in this part of our state, because there's only a certain time that you can apply fungicides to protect yourself against this kind of disease, and we're reaching that point in time where it might be a little too late.
Right.
But we can certainly warn our producers in the northern part of the state, which their wheat crop is not as far along as the wheat crop in the southwest, and they should stand on fair warning that this disease could cause a problem up there.
Yeah.
And be prepared to respond appropriately.
With the changes in, kind of as you put it, the race of stripe rust, what does that mean for the breeding program and for producers into the future? Or do we know?
Well, in terms of the breeding program, it's like I compared to the sporting event. Well, we have to look at the depth on our team. Hopefully we have enough depth on our team that we can bring in some players that can score against this new opponent. And that's exactly what I'm trying to assess right now in the breeding program. Do we have depth in our program, depth being genetic diversity, to allow us to respond to this new race of stripe rust? I think we do. I'm fairly encouraged by what I see. I just took a look at our most elite material at another location before I arrived here, and I would say about 30% of our senior class, the ones that are coming to the end of the line,
Yeah.
Are showing a reaction that I would be on caution about.
Right.
But it's only 30%. There's another 70% that look very good.
Great.
So I'm very pleased about that.
All right. Well, hopefully this year will be fair warning for those that can still take care of business, and for those that can't, well, we'll see what happens this year and make some good decisions for next year.
Very good.